Debbie Coyle. I'm teaching the basics and introduction to Kumihimo for Crow Lee because he is sick and wasn't able to attend today, and I was always his backup teacher. So I promise you're not, well, you may be getting second best, but you are getting someone who's qualified. And I would like to, before I start, thank Gita. Did I get it right? Gita. I also am the person, if I didn't already say this, running Fiberary. And I really, really need to thank our Zoom hosts who have been fabulous. We could not be doing this without our teachers and without our Zoom hosts. And I never realized how much a Zoom host could do for you when you were teaching a class until I started doing this. They are incredible and the jack of all trades dealing with everything. And as a teacher, you just say, I want this to happen, and it happens. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome, and I'm glad to be able to help.
Much appreciated. So how many people do I have here that plan to participate with me tonight? I see 3, 4 hands. Do I have anybody who doesn't have hands? 5 hands.
My hand's not up. I'm just watching.
Oh, 6, 7, 8. Okay. All righty. So we got a bunch of you. I'm going to show you stuff that you may have. Oh, I need to share screen again. I'm sorry. I went away and I'm no longer co-host. Okay. There we go. So the first place is my webpage, which is lynette.housezachariah.com, which has a whole bunch of different fiber arts things here that some of them are mine, some are from other people, some are from the handouts from classes we've had this month. And the one that's of importance to you right now is Kumihimo Braiding. If you go to my Kumihimo webpage, you see a bunch of stuff. The first thing I want to point you to is up here, prep for the online class. You may have already done this, but first of all, this is a picture of cord that the results of the cord we'll be working on today. It's a round cord, even though it doesn't look like it in this picture. That'll either give you straight lines, spirals, or these weird little herringbone spots. The interesting part is it's all the same movements. It's just how you set up the threads, how you set up the colors. If you have been here, you've already seen everything you need to do to set up for the class. Do I have anybody that hasn't got their Maru die set up and ready to go? Okay, I see one hand, but I can't see everyone. Okay, so while okay, I got at least another one. All righty, while I'm talking, what I need, well, let me stop share screen. And those of you who are following along and don't have your disc set up yet, could you please unmute yourself and we'll have a conversation.
Hello, me. I need to set mine up.
Okay, so I've got
Debbie, your microphone just got really quiet.
Okay.
I can still hear you, but it's
Can you hear me okay now?
it's still, is anybody else?
You're a baby
No.
voice now.
Is
Now you're silent.
it's kind of quieting sound. I
Yeah.
guess what's going on.
We can't hear you, Debbie.
Part of my screen, she's muted.
I think she
Still can't hear you, Debbie.
Yeah.
Nope.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, but with a little
Okay.
bit of an echo.
Huh.
All right.
Is this any better or worse?
Now you're
Quiet.
soft again.
Alrighty, well, it's going to have to be this one. And I don't know why my system suddenly decided to get weird, but it did. So I see 3 people unmuted. Are all 3 of you needing to get your disc ready to go? Yes?
I'm gonna
Yes.
work on it as we talk.
Now, do you have discs? Oh, 4. Okay. Do you have
Almost
discs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are
And
we
Tina,
supposed to
Yes.
have 4 of each color or 4 of 2 colors? Or
Um,
2?
yeah, 4 of one color, 4 of a second color.
Okay.
Okay. And I'll tell you how to set the colors up. But are you guys all close to being ready?
You can go ahead and I'll catch up.
Yes.
Okay. Alrighty. So I have some talking I want to do, so you've got a little bit of time. So this shows you how to get everything set up, which you may or may not have already done. But it also shows you how to make your own Kumihimo disc out of cardboard, whatever thickness you want, or as somebody just mentioned before class, foam core board. I've only had you make slots for the threads we're going to be using in this class, and the instructions are all over here. I made my bobbins out of several different things for this class because I was doing it for people who didn't have a chance to go out and get anything. I showed them how to make them out of the same cardboard. But you can also use other materials you may have around the house. And I talk about counterweight and yarn in here. So if you enjoy this class and decide you want to go on and do Kumihimo and don't have what you need to do it, here is how to do it. Also, on my Kumihimo webpage, the share screen thing keeps getting in the way of the top of my, great, whatever. If you go to my Kumihimo page, I also, sorry for a little bit of ad, I sell Kumihimo kits. So if you don't have Kumihimo kits and you don't want to make your own, you can also contact me and buy one. But that's not the reason for this class. I'm not here to try to get you to buy something. I just mentioned that in case it makes your life easier. So we are going to work on a round cord today. And one thing I'd like you to know is Kumihimo, well, actually, I'm sorry. Crow will kill me if I don't go into history a little bit more here. Kumihimo is a Japanese word for kumi, which is to braid, and himo, which is cord. I'm just reading out the screen here. It encompasses many types and shapes of braid done in different styles with different tools. Traditionally, it's done with silk threads, although we modern Kumihimo people use all kinds of things. You know that thin telephone wire with a different colored plastic coating? People have been using that. You can use ribbon. You can use jewelry chain. You can use, in fact, one I didn't bring it again. I have a friend, Elder and Oak, and she heard me teach this class so many times, even though she does wire work and jewelry making, she got a Kumihimo disc and did a jewelry wire weight. Kumihimo, the same pattern you're doing, the round braid is actually hollow in the center. So she made sure hers stayed hollow in the center, put round beads inside, and then close it up as a bracelet. It's like, yes, crossover. Anyway, the Kumihimo braiding goes back to 7,500 BC in Japan, if you can believe. And they stole it from the Koreans who had it even before then. But what the Japanese did is what they do with anything. They took something and turned it into a high art form. and watching somebody do Kumihimo on the Maru die, which is what this is it's just gorgeous, just watching the rhythm of the movements. This is how it was traditionally done, kneeling at the Maru die. Nowadays, we do it on these foam discs, which had become a dying art form in Japan. And in, I can't remember, the 70s or the 80s, some people in England and America discovered it and started teaching it and writing books about it and getting it to where it is today. Two of my favorite people for that is Roderick Owen. His book, 250 Braid Patterns from Japan, Peru, and Beyond, is fantastic. It covers both how to do it on the Maru die and how to do it on the handheld disc. And he also talks about how to make a Maru die or a handheld disc at home. The interesting part is the Ashley's Book of Knots, which is my favorite book in the whole wide world. If you like knots, you need to have a copy of this. And he has got some of the most, every time I learn a fiber art, it's like, oh, look, it was in Ashley's. He has Kumihimo patterns in his book, and some of the and beyond patterns that Roderick Owen has are some of the ones that he got out of Ashley's Book of Knots. Kumihimo patterns can give you a cord that's round, square, flat, half round, and Ashley has some amazing ones like a 5-sided cord, a star-shaped cord. If you cut it across the top, it's 5-pointed star-shaped. It takes like 1 million bobbins to do, and 2 million moves, but there you go. And Jackie Carey, and neither of her names is spelled anywhere like what you think, has written several books. Her Beginner's Guide to Braiding is amazing in that she has photos of every single step, including the really important point of braiding, which is the middle of your disc or Maru die where you see what's happening. Now, hers are Maru die only, but especially the simpler ones, you can translate that to the disc. And if you like beads and braids is for you. I can't imagine there is a method of incorporating beads in your Kumihimo cord that is not covered in her book. And just since I didn't mention it, on my website, my Kumihimo website, the first entry is Kumihimo history, how-to, bibliography, whatnot. That's where we are right now. So it's got this bibliography attached to it. You don't need to take notes other than to pay attention to which ones I think are the best. And then I've got some websites, some handouts and stuff. This is from 2006. Some of these websites may or may not still exist. I apologize for that. Weaver's Hand and Braider's Hand are two fabulous websites. They sell, I don't know why I don't have Braider's Hand here. You'll have to take a note of that, I'm afraid. It's Braiders, Braiders, Hand. And I believe it's just .com. It's the sister site of Weaver's Hand. They sell Kumihimo and weaving supplies and materials, but they also have some very interesting photo galleries and connections to different things. So they're a good place to go look. You have my wrong email address here. Lynette has Sakurai.com does work. That's right, it does work. I have a ton of email addresses. Anyway, So there's a lot more history here about Kumihimo, but you want to play with stuff. So let's go back here. I mentioned that there's a bunch of different shapes. I have patterns here for flat braids, and these are some pictures of different ways your flat braid can look. Again, all of these braids use the same motions, but you set the color up differently. And this is some round braids that you can make. Same thing, but you set the colors up differently. I've also got some info on how to make your own homemade tama, which is bobbins, for the Maro die and for the disc, and also how to make your own Maro die if you want, which is the braiding stand. But what we're going to do today is we're going to go to the round braid, the first one, the pattern here, 3 2-color patterns, and I've got that open here. And it starts out with some history. It starts out with info on preparing the disc and preparing the bobbins. The best idea on the market right now is these bobbins, which are called snap to or easy bobbins. And the thing is that they snap open for you to wind the thread on, and then they snap closed and they hold the thread there until you pull down on them to lengthen the thread. But like I said, on my web page, you can find info on how to make your own if you want to do something. Now we're getting to, when you work on Kumihimo, I'm going to leave my screen sharing for a moment. And could you snapshot or whatever it is, me? Can you? Yeah, sorry. I can't remember the technology words and the Kumihimo class at the same time. Spotlight, that's it. When you are doing Kumihimo, you have weight on the bobbins and you have weight on the cord that you're making, and those balance each other out. Traditionally, the counterweight, which is the weight on the cord you finished, is about 1/2 to 2/3 the combined weight of all the bobbins. The bobbins that they use are weighted. Now, when you're using a disc, you do not have weights on your bobbin. And that's because on the disc, if you get the foam disc, you've got a slit here, which you'll see better when I'm doing this on my close-up cam. That slit provides the tension. It's what keeps your threads nice and straight and taut.
If you turn your volume down just a tad, maybe that will help.
Oh, is it still?
Yeah. Say your
Yes, it's
say
a little
ABCs.
boomy, but let's try it again. Oh, and now we've lost you again. Yeah.
The right.
Try it again.
And you can't hear me here, right?
We can hear you now. Yes, we can hear you now. It sounds good.
You can hear me on this.
Yes.
Okay. All righty. Because my camera has a mic on it.
Ah, okay.
So I'm using that instead of my laptop mic. I don't know why my laptop mic isn't happy.
Yeah. But
and I know how annoying it is when the teacher sounds oogity. So I'm good?
Yes, you're good. You're good now.
All righty. Okay, and somebody's put, this is the site I go to for patterns. Okay. So going back to screen sharing then, for this particular cord, for the round cord that we're doing here today, and let me tell you, there are a ton of different round cord patterns. There's a ton of different Kumihimo patterns, and you will find more than one round cord pattern, more than one flat cord pattern. This is just the one I like to use. There is a problem with this. Shoot, I thought I had gotten them all. If you printed this out, please change your handout so that for stripes it says AB, 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 AB. This AA is a mistake. I thought I'd fixed it everywhere, but not here. So the way we're going to be setting up our threads today is you've got two colors, and I'm going to show you on this one when I fix it and make it right again. Come on. I've got brown and blue, and you should be able to see I've got brown, blue, brown, blue, brown, blue, brown, blue on all opposite each other. One up top, one down at the bottom, one on the left, one on the right. So your two colors should be set up that way. That will give you stripes. But
Can you hold that up again, please?
Uh-huh. And it's the diagram that I've got here on the shared screen, except ignore the fact that the top one says AA. It should say AB here, AB here, AB here, and AB here. Okay? Everyone got it? So if you were to take those same 8 bobbins and put color A at top and bottom and color B on the sides, you would get a spiral design in your cord. And if you put A on top and on one side, B on the bottom and on the other side, then you get those herringbone diamond spots. But right now, what I want you to do is set it up with the colors alternating. At top, have color A and then B. On the one side, A and then B. Next side, AB and then AB. If you're going clockwise, it's A, B. And then at 3 o'clock, AB. At 6 o'clock, AB. At 9 o'clock, AB. And then we're back up at 12 o'clock again. So everybody got that going on? Tina doesn't seem to have anything on her disc.
Not sure how to put it on the disc.
Oh, actually, that's a very good question. Thank you. I covered up here, and I was just pretending that everybody was ready to go. So let me show you on this one. What you do is you take your 8 bobbins and you're going to tie them together. Let me stop screen sharing here and change my camera to my close-up camera. No, whoops. There we go. So I have 8 bobbins and I've got threads coming out of those bobbins. What I want you to do is take those threads, tie them together just with an overhand knot, which is just this kind of knot, where you make a loop, put the threads through it. In my case, when I set the threads up, I just, instead of measuring out 5 yards, I measured out 10 yards, folded them all in half, and then wound 2 bobbins off of each 10 yards. But you can do them individually, just tie them together like this. When you've tied them together, you're going to take your disc, and what I like to do with my disc is I like to mark it. You can use, when you buy the disc, they come set up like this with numbers on them. And if you use the Roderick Owen book, he will say move a thread from number 1 to number 8. And then the one from number 9 will go to whatever. The problem is that when I taught people that, too many people were getting reliant on the numbers and never saw the pattern. And the important part to Kumihimo is to see the pattern. So what I do now is I have them mark an X at one spot, and right across from that, do a dash. And then at the two sides, put a dash. Now, if you have one that's got north, south, east, and west picked out, then you can just say that's where you're going to make your mark on this side. I do the X because, as you will learn later on, this is the front of the disc. You're going to keep that near you as you work. So you're going to take your threads, where you made the knot, and you're going to put that down through the center. Flip this over, and you're going to take your counterweight, whatever you've decided to use as a counterweight. I love the hardware store as a craft store, and I get these. If you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, you can buy them by the box, or you can buy them individually. You can buy them in all different sizes and weights. I went through one day, I bought a bunch of different nuts and bolts and washers, and I brought them home and weighed them all out so that I know how much each one weighs and I can control it. But you can use whatever you want as long as you use the same weight consistently on the cord you're working on. Now, on my handout, I show you how to make a lark's head knot. Sorry, I'd forgotten that not everybody had prepared for the class. So to tie the lark's head knot, what you're going to do is you're going to, come on. I used to have fingernails. Well, what I called fingernails. What I like to do to tie a lark's head knot, you can watch me and also follow along on the screen share. Can you see both me and the screen share?
Yes.
Yes, okay. What I like to do is I like to take and I put my thumb and forefinger together, put them through the loop of the thread, of the loop that I've made on my counterweight. Bring the nut up to the top and drop it down so that, can you see it? There. What I've done is I've just dropped it down between the two fingers so that I've now got that V in front of the crossbar that's underneath my fingers. That's this illustration here. You can do it laying flat down on the table too. Then I take the thread on my thumb, put it on my index finger, try not to lose circulation in that finger. You want to pull those loops off. Where's my camera? Pull those loops off your finger without letting them close, because you made a loop that will close. And then you're going to slide that over your cut your tied ends, and you're going to tighten it shut. Now, I like to do it with the threads that were sticking out from the knot I used to secure my loop there, because what you can do later on when it's time to move your weight up, you can pull on those threads to open the loop up again. And then you can move that thread up and down your cord. And I'll show that to you better close up later on. Having done that, you're now going to lay out your threads, and you're going to follow whatever pattern you're using for this particular pattern, which in this case is AB, 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 AB. And instead of dealing with that, I'm just going to come back to this one, which is already set up. Okay. Did everybody who wasn't set up follow all that? I see Tina's together. Pamela looks like she's together. I can't see anybody else in gallery view because I only get part of it. Nick looks like she's ready. And the rest of you don't have cameras. Okay. So I haven't heard anything to the negative. I'm going to assume we're ready or close to ready. What I've got here, and I've got lots of instructions. Part of what I'm saying is here in the notes. And here is my, excuse me, diagram and words on how to do how to make the movements for your cord. I know some people work better with words. Some people work better with diagrams. This is what I meant by, if you're doing something out of Roderick Owen's book, don't just follow the numbers that he has. See the pattern and learn to use the pattern and make the pattern. It will make your life much easier. And the pattern that we've got here is you've got, okay, I'd like to think of the X or the plus sign, whichever one it is, as being connected to my belly button. So it's toward me whenever I start my cord. So you're going to keep that X facing you. And that's what we've got right here. Here's my X, here's my threads in their starting position. And now I'm going to do step A. I'm going to pick up my upper left-hand thread.
Excuse me, could
Yes?
you spotlight the wheel instead of the handout? Because
Alrighty.
the wheel won't be recorded.
Oh, if I don't, okay. Alrighty, so if you have the instructions, get them open in front of you so that you can see what I'm talking about. And in fact, let me go here first. What we're going to do without the wheel is we're going to pick up the upper left-hand thread. We're going to move it over its partner and down next to the next thread. We're going to pick up the middle thread, which was the first thread in this pair. It's going to go over its partner, down next to the next pair, middle thread, over its partner, etc. Just so you know how to read my diagrams here. Then we're going to be moving some threads in. Then we're going to go the opposite direction. So the way that looks in real life, and let me get this so that the X is, the X is toward you, right? So that looks like, yeah, the X is toward you, correct?
It's actually at the upper part away.
Okay.
There we go.
There. How's that?
Yes.
Okay. It's on my right-hand side. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick up the upper left-hand thread, and that's going to be the one opposite the X. You're going to go over, oh, and when you pick it up by pinching it between your two fingers, but try not to get too much move in the thread. You just want to come over here, over its partner, down next to the next pair. Pick up the middle thread, which was the first one in that pair. You're going to pick that one up. It's going to go over its partner, down next to the next pair. Going to pick up the middle one, which was the first one in the pair, over its partner, down next to the next pair. Middle one over its partner, down next to the lonely one. Now, the threads need to be on either side of the marks that I made. So we have some housekeeping here to put them back where they belong. The problem being that on a disc, when I want to move my thread from here to here, I can't because something's already there. So I have to put it down here, then move this one, then move this one into place. So that's what the housekeeping is all about. Now, I've done one full rotation and I've done my housekeeping. Now, here's where it gets a little weird. I'm going to pick up the thread that I didn't use last time. So it's going to be the upper right-hand thread gets picked up. It goes over its partner, which means it goes in the other direction. down next to the next pair, pick up the middle thread over its partner, down next to the next pair, middle thread over its partner, down next to the next pair, middle thread over its partner, down next to the lonely one. And I am serious. For a beginner, your best bet is to say that mantra to yourself as you're making the moves. Eventually, you aren't going to need the mantra anymore. But right now, things can be fairly confusing. And as long as you think of it as picking up a specific chord and moving it over its partner down before the next pair, you're going to be in good shape. So we've done a complete setup, one clockwise, one counterclockwise. Now, I put this down somewhere and I come back to it tomorrow, and I don't remember what I did last. But if you come here and look at the center, you can see that the brown thread here is on top of the blue thread. You see how the blue is underneath the brown? That means that the brown thread is the last one that you moved. That means up here on top, I moved the right hand thread last, because that's the one that's on the top. So now I'm going to move my left hand thread again. It's going to go up over its partner, down next to the next pair, center one, up over its partner, down next to the next pair, center one, up over its partner, down next to the next pair, up over its partner next to the lonely one, housekeeping to get them on either side of the marks, and then the blue thread is the one that's on top, so the brown one is the one that I need to move next. So I'm going to pick that one up over its partner, down next to the next pair. I'm going to keep doing that. Okay. And then I'm going to do housekeeping. Now, I will show you a secret. I've got it pointed toward me. This is how I do it. Whoops. I moved one. I turn my disc around. I moved the other. I turn my disc around. Moved one. I turn my disc around. You can turn the disc as you're working. And that's one reason why I have you put the X there, because I know to start my next move, I put it back this way, and this is the side I'm going to be moving my threads on, and I'm going to be turning the disc as I work. Whichever one works best for you is fine, as long as you always remember to put the X towards you when you start, and you start on the side opposite the X. A couple do's and don'ts. You want enough weight on your bobbin, your counterweight here, that it's pulling your thread down. Can you, if you look very closely at my center of braiding, can you see it rise up there? See the shadow between the thread and the disc? And now there's no shadow because it's lowered down. This is what happens when I take the weight off of the counterweight. You take the weight off there and it's no longer pulling down. The way Kumihimo works, what am I trying to do, is change camera. The way Kumihimo works is as you're braiding, that counterweight is pulling down on the threads that you're picking up and moving. This is going to sound counterintuitive, but the more weight you have on your counterweight, the looser your braid is going to be. Because the more weight you have, the more aggressively it's pulling that finished cord down as you move the threads. So there's going to be more space between each thread in your finished cord. Now also the looser the cord, the springier it's going to be. So if you want to use this for something like jewelry and you want a solid cord that's going to stay the same length, you're going to want less weight than if you want something that's going to be nice and springy and can get longer and shorter. When you're working, you have to be very, very careful that your counterweight is not over a table or your lap, because as you're working, this cord gets longer and the counterweight moves down. It started out right at the top of the cord here, and you can see it's now down half an inch or so. It's going to keep moving down as I work, and eventually it's going to rest on whatever it's above, which means you're going to change the tension on your cord. And now you're going to have a section that looks different and acts differently than your initial section was. So that's one thing you have to keep an eye out for. And another thing that you have to watch out for when you're working, you see how nice and straight my threads are? You do not want your thread to do this, even a little bit. If it's not straight and taut, doesn't have to be, oh, incredibly tight, but it has to be taut. If you've got a little bit of extra thread there, it's going to translate down into your cord. And one of these was a really good example. Well, that's a whole nother mistake altogether. Can you see here? I've got these little lumps sticking out on the side of my cord. This one right here. Instead of it being nice and smooth, there's a little lump sticking out. That lump is there because there was some looseness in the thread, and as you work, that gets translated down into your cord, and it comes out as a lump on the side of your cord. So not only are you working hard to remember the pattern, you're also watching the counterweight to make sure it doesn't land on anything, and watching these threads to make sure that they're taut. It's also nice to keep this, which is called the center of braiding, in the center of the hole there. As you work or as you tighten things up, it may get pulled off to one side or the other. And you see in that pulling, I just got some looseness here in this thread. Instead of being taut, it's gotten a little looseness in it. So if you keep it nice and centered, and if you ever are unsure, if you just grab a hold of your threads below the disc and just tug a little bit, and do that on all four of them, that'll help center it and help tighten it for you. And then you can go on your merry way doing your thing. Now, at this point, I've taken you through several things and I've said a lot. Are there any questions, problems, complaints, anything? I'll take that as a no. Does anybody have anything they've done that they'd like to show us?
Like I haven't done enough rounds yet to.
Yeah, it's so
show.
tiny.
Okay. It's hard to tell at first. And as I keep talking, just keep working the pattern. Up over its partner, down next to the next pair. Middle one comes up over its partner. And Richard, Gita's husband in the background, who has a Maro die. It's real easy when you're doing this pattern on the Maro die. The brain is an amazing thing. When I first learned this on the Maro die, and I've watched other people do it too, and that's why I came up with this mantra. You know you're supposed to go over one thread Let's see, I'm gonna spotlight me again. Oh no, I am still spotlighted. I just changed
Yes,
mine.
you are.
Um,
It's Robert.
oh, Robert, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's
Robert.
Okay.
I got part of it right.
Yeah, hey, it was an R name, so
Right?
good.
Oh, so when you know that you're supposed to come up and go over one thread, and on the Maru die, there's not slots. So the threads are just laying here together. And I've seen people's brains, and my brain did it too. You pick this one up and you go, okay, now I have to go over one thread. Totally missing the fact that you went over one thread before you said that, and then you go over an extra thread. That's why I came up with the mantra, and it works just as well on the Maru die as it does on the disc of pick it up, go over its partner, so that you let your brain know which one that one is. That one is the one it's sitting right next to, over its partner, down next to the next pair. Also helps you remember you don't go in the middle of that pair, you go next to it. And on the Maru die, it's real easy to put your thread down in between those two because you don't have the slits differentiating it. So this mantra is one that I have worked on over the years and refined as we go along. So far, it seems like the best mantra. Okay. Now, I said, when you look at the center, you can see that the brown thread is over the blue thread. However, here's another caution. And here is one of the fun things I get to do as a teacher. Do not whatsoever get dependent on the colors. Right now, you've got color A going over color B, color A going over color B, etc. But then, and we're going to do this before the end of class, we're going to switch it up so that the top and bottom ones are both A and the side ones are both B. Now, when you do the pattern, same movements, up over its partner, down next to the next pair. It will not be color A going over color B. It'll be color A going over color A, B over B, etc., etc., etc. And the fun thing I get to do as a teacher is the people who don't pay attention to me and get dependent on the color, I literally get to watch their brains explode when they get to this next one. Because when I was working for the LA Times back when computers were still new, we had personal PCs, but we had this one little red PC that was used specifically for searching one news vendor. And there were specific key movements you had to use for it, specific things you had to do, and there were abbreviations to search for this field or that field. And we all got used to using this stupid little red computer, and it was small. You almost had to use a pen to press the keys. It was that small. And so one of the IT folks did us a favor, and he mapped all of those key combinations and key info to the PC and installed a program on our PC so that we could search from our desk instead of having to go up, stand in front of this little terminal and wait for whoever else was using it. We could do it on our PC. But the thing is, and I was PC literate at the time, and I should have been able to do it. None of us could do it because our brain needed the visual clue of that little red terminal to remember the abbreviations, to remember the fields, to remember everything. And it was stupid, but he had to take the program off of our PCs and put us back on the little red terminal because that's the way your brain works.
Oh.
And the point is that with this, if you get dependent on what color is going over what color, Your brain is going to get dependent on that and is going to have problems doing other patterns, same movements, but now the colors are different and your brain explodes. Any questions, problems, issues? Let me go to, well, actually, let's go to the site that Jocelyn mentioned. I'm not sharing my screen right now, am I? No. So if I come,
Not yet.
there we go, and hit share screen here. This is the screen she was talking about, friendshipbracelets.net. And if I click on this one, it shows me how to set up my colors. This uses, I presume each one of these things is a bobbin. So it uses a bunch of different bobbins. And I presume, do these all use the same pattern, Jocelyn? The same movements?
No, this one, when you go to the first page, you can actually select how many bobbins you want, and then it'll pull up all the patterns that have been submitted based on the number of bobbins you've chosen. You can also generate, by tapping the generate button, you can generate your own patterns and then get an idea what they're going to look like.
After you've set up the bobbins, do you move the bobbins the same for every one of these patterns?
Well, this one, the way this one works is you go across the wheel, not quarters.
Yeah,
that's how most of these patterns seem to be set up.
Yeah, this is one of the standard round patterns. And in fact, there is what we call the Green Book and the Red Book, which are by Shirley Berlin, who was one of the first voices in Kumihimo in America. And what you do is you've got a bunch of different bobbins, and they're always in sets of 2. And what you do instead of what I'm doing is, correct me if I'm wrong, this one comes up, this one comes down, then I move over one and I do the same thing.
Yes.
So it's a very simple pattern. The only really interesting thing about the pattern is remembering where you left off. But again, the trick of looking down to see what the last threads you used were will tell you where you left off and where you can go from here. And the nice thing,
when I leave off, I actually will leave 3 threads up and 1 thread down.
Yeah. What you do is you stop here.
Yes.
And then you know your next move is to come down here and then move the disc over. But also, if you look, after you've made one full move, if you look down, you can see what the last set of threads you moved were. But your method is easier, and it's what most people use. Your method is easier because it's very, very visual, and it's real easy to pick up. One nice thing about these discs, since they do hold your threads in place, what you do after you're done with it, if you're smart, and I'm usually not, you take and you put them in a Ziploc sandwich bag and you seal it up. This keeps your threads from getting too tangled up amongst themselves and keeps them from getting tangled up with whatever you have. Now, if you're incredibly smart, you will also print out your pattern and you will put it in there, because 6 months from now, when you say, oh yeah, I did that Kumihimo thing with Debbie, and I want to do that again. How do I do that again? You want to have the pattern in with the disc. I found myself, I had a couple different round patterns that I liked and a couple different flat patterns that I liked. And I stopped, whoops, sorry, turned off my video. Hello? Oh, start video again. I had put them all aside in plastic bags because I was that smart. but I didn't mark what pattern I was using. And 6 months to a year later, I go, oh, I wanted, yeah. So there are several patterns. That site uses a pattern different from this one, which is to say nothing against that site or that pattern. One thing about this pattern is it's 8 bobbins only. The site that she's got here is however many bobbins you want, as long as it's more than 4 and it's always in pairs. Actually, you can do it with 4 too, but it's kind of boring. And you'll see the threads just sort of travel around the disc as you work. You can also Google Kumihimo patterns and find, when I first started, there were like 3 patterns online, and that was it. Nowadays, there's a bunch of free patterns out there.
Pinterest.
Yeah, Pinterest. The only problem with Pinterest is people don't curate their pins, and you don't know if you click on it if it's going to go to something useful or just a picture of something. Nowadays, when I'm searching something, I actually, when you're searching, you can do the minus sign followed by a word, which means show me things that don't have that word in. So nowadays, when I'm searching, I usually say minus Pinterest, because at best, Pinterest is going to just take me back to other sites that I would have found with my Google search. And at worst, it's going to show me something that's really not useful. But you can find pretty pictures there of stuff. And if you find someone who's curated their links and their links go to good, viable places, you got a gold mine there. I was going to, so we talked about putting, oh, one thing that I wanted to tell Richard. Did I get it right this time? Robert, I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's
Just
actually Robartok, but it's, like I said, it's the Irish form of Robert. So
Robert. Sorry, I'm terrible with names.
that's okay. I understand.
You were talking about how you close off your Mara die at the end of the day.
Mhm.
What I do is I take a piece of string and put it, tie it in a circle and put it down around the legs. Then I take my bobbins and I'll take the bobbin and flip it. Well, I can't show you here, but I'll flip it up over that string.
Oh, okay.
So that it just goes around that string. And that will keep it pretty much in place. And if you also use your clamps in between the 4 sets, that'll help keep them in place. And then I take a shower cap. I put it over the top.
Oh yeah.
That keeps the threads from getting dirty, and
yeah, because if you leave it for a bit and forget about it, then it could get dusty or whatever.
Dusty, yeah, and things get put on top of it and it gets scratched and whatnot. Working Kumihimo on a Maro die is my favorite way of doing Kumihimo. However, at least 95 or more % of my time is spent on the disc, because here's my favorite funny story. I'm sorry, what?
I was just saying, it's more portable.
It's more portable. What you see, if you learn anything about the history of fiber arts, is things like spinning, weaving, whatnot. They started out in a portable state.
Mm-hmm.
Spinning was done on a drop spindle that you carry with you. It later became spinning on a spinning wheel that sits on a floor somewhere. Weaving started out on the backstrap loom that when you're not using it, you just roll it up, carry it away with you. It became a floor loom. Kumihimo braiding started out, as far back as we know, on that stand that I showed you.
Oh, wow.
And then last century, it became portable.
That's funny.
It went the opposite direction of most of the fiber arts out there. And it's totally I think the 70s or the 80s, is when they started getting Kumihimo going outside of Japan in England and then in America. And at first it was just on the Maru die. And then it became on handheld discs. And then they came up with different types of foam discs, settling on these type, which you can get, last I knew, well, you can get them through Fire Mountain Gems.
Oh, yes, yes.
If you go to your local hobby store and go to the kids section, or Walmart used to have them too, you can get Lanyard Kits, which are just Kumihimo kits, but they use the lanyard plastic cord, which you should throw away because they use the soft lanyard cord, which is great when you're making them by hand, but the slots are too tight to get the light cord in easily, and it makes you crazy.
I can imagine, yeah.
I like size 3 or 5 crochet cotton. Size 10 crochet cotton if you want something smaller that will take longer to make. And here's the thing. This is the thing I was trying to remember to tell you. The bigger the cord on your bobbins, the thicker it is, the thicker your finished cord is going to be. This round cord can be anywhere between really, really thin if you use size 10 crochet cotton to really thick if you use worsted weight yarn, or you use peaches and cream worsted weight cotton. I prefer non-stretchy thread for my Kumihimo, but that doesn't mean you have to use non-stretchy thread. You can use other, it's good. I like to start you out with this. Tension on Kumihimo isn't as much of a problem as it is in several other things. And those of you who took my Lucette class will be going hallelujah, because in Lucette, tension is everything. But here, as long as you keep your threads taut and you're working the thread easily, you don't have tension problems. But what you will notice, I said that this gives you a straight line. And let me go back to the close-up camera. I'm trying to train myself not to call it the lap cam, because that's just rude. If you can see, this is my straight section. And you can see it's not exactly straight. Oftentimes when you look at your straight section, it's going to look like it's spiraled, because you'll find that one hand is a little stronger than the other hand. And that when you're moving to the right or to the left, or using your right hand or your left hand, you're pulling just a little tighter. And so it's going to spiral a little bit. My favorite video of Kumihimo from Japan has them with a finished cord between 2 chopsticks. And they're holding it over the spout of a steaming tea kettle. And they're just running it back and forth and back and forth. Basically, you want to get it moist. Hot and moist is good. And then you're going to take and you're going to twist the thread till you've got your pattern nice and straight. And then you're going to put it down and weight down the ends or pin it down or something so that it dries in that position. It's the same kind of blocking that you do for knitting or crocheting or other things like that. But usually I don't even bother with that. Several of us here belong to a living history group that researches and recreates the Middle Ages. And we have medallions that we give out for various different reasons. Over the last 30 or so years, we've gotten into the habit of people make cord that they donate for the purposes of stringing the medallions out before you give them to the recipient. So usually I don't even bother blocking them. They're going to be wearing it as a necklace. It's going to look just fine. The weight of the medallion is going to straighten it out a little bit. But if you want it to look really, really wonderful, or depending on what materials you've used, some materials may need more blocking than others. You may want to block it like that. That's about all I have to say at this point. Does anyone have any questions, answers, comments?
I did have one question. I was wondering if you've used silk cording before to do this, and I don't mean rat tail. I mean, you know.
Yes, this is traditionally done with silk threads. Silk threads are very, very fine, which means you use multiple threads per bobbin.
Ah.
Getting those threaded up and done up right is a lot of fun. I haven't used silk. I've used bison cord, I think it's called. It's imitation silk thread. And I made a few things with it, but since I don't make anything that's really fancy, I haven't really done much of it. But one thing that you will see in a book that uses silk thread for their Kumihimo is, where are we? Here, nope. Well, let's go back here and click on the link. When they use silk thread, and like I said, Japan, they turn everything into an art form. The legs on your maru die are going to be out further than what I've got here. They're going to be out close to where the bobbins are. And then there's going to be a towel around it. Or the legs are where they are and there's a lot of toweling. The point is that when the bobbins lay, or when they're blah, 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 when they're hanging down, they are laying up against the towel. And the instructions will not only include info on which bobbin to pick up and where to move it, it will also tell you how many times to twist it and in which direction. Because silk is very reflective. And they figured out that the amount of twist and the direction of the twist will cause that silk to reflect the light in different ways. So when they're making their Kumihimo cord, not only are they braiding with silk, they're braiding with light, which just gives me the chills.
Right? Oh.
Yeah. I mean, they are just incredibly artistic. And I'm so glad that Kumihimo in Japan hasn't been allowed to die out, because there are a lot of things that they do that we don't get into doing. Oh, American Kumihimo Society. I should mention that since I'm mentioning this right now. And let me get to it. And they have American Kumihimo Society. They have an annual membership, an annual gathering, which was virtual last year. And I can't remember, it's going to be virtual again this year. I'm not sure, or it already happened. I don't remember. This is another, now Kumihimo refers to any braid that they make. It means to braid cord. This is another type, a piece of equipment that's used for braiding. It's called a taka die. They've got a whole bunch of different pieces of equipment. The maru die is just one of them. And if you go to their website, you can find, I forget what all's on here, online.
I just dropped the link in the chat.
Thank you. They've got the catalogs from their previous, oh, here we go. Here's a slideshow of stuff from their previous shows. And you can join and you can go to their shows. And this is a Maro die with a lot of bobbins. And this is, I presume, what she's made off of it. And where's the next one? This is adding beads as you work. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pairs of bobbins, and it's got beads that you can add down to it. So American Kumihimo Society is one place to check out, and I'm not altogether sure it's on my handout because I think I discovered them after that.
I just dropped that in the chat, as well as they have a Facebook page. And when we're done with this, I'll put together the different links that we've talked about and put that in the class.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay.
Save in the chat.
So, yes, each one is a pair for Kangagumi. So at this point, I would like to transition you to a different thread layout. I would like to move you, and if you feel like life is just too confusing at this point and you're happy doing what you're doing, then that's just fine. But what I would like to do is get you to move your threads so that color A is top and bottom, color B is side to side. And if you look at your threads, it doesn't really matter how you move your threads because there's going to be a little blurb where you made the change. But if you look, this brown thread is on top of this blue thread. So if I undo this blue thread, that's another thing I need to mention, and undo the brown thread and put it over the blue thread, I get as little change as possible to where the threads lay. And now, since I've started something brand new, it doesn't matter where you were when I'm having a problem right now. My bobbins have wound around each other. I will talk about that in a minute. Since I've changed where the threads lie, it doesn't really matter where I moved the camera. I was a bad girl. What you moved last, you're going to start all the way at the beginning. Upper left-hand thread goes over its partner, down next to the next pair. Middle one up over its partner, down next to the next pair. Middle one over its partner, next pair. Middle one over its partner, lonely one, and housekeeping. And then we go the other direction. Up over its partner, down next to the next pair, over its partner, next pair, over its partner, next pair. Okay. And if you were watching as I did this, the color pattern, the color layout shifted. Suddenly, instead of having blues together and browns together, I went back to a pattern that looks kind of familiar to you, but not exactly the same. I've got brown, blue, blue, brown, brown, blue, blue, brown. And that's okay. That's what happens after the first move. After the second move, it's going to go back to 2 colors next to each other, although it's going to change. The blues and the browns will have changed places. So I've got this next. So if you feel comfortable, go ahead and change it over. If you don't, just keep going with where you are. Oh, and here's what I was going to tell you. First of all, take a look at your counterweight. Does your counterweight need to be moved up? If it does, what you do is you take your disc and you're going to put it flat down on something, and you're going to take the weight off your bobbin. You're going to lay your bobbin down on something so it's not pulling on anything. I told you about this little bit of thread that I leave sticking out here, and you're going to want to pull that thread, and you can see my loop is opening up here. I've now got this nice big loop here. So now I can slide it further up my work and then tighten it again. The only challenge with this is make sure when you're braiding that you don't braid that little, come here, that little tab of thread, sorry about this, into your braid. That can be bad. I've done it, I know. The other thing I was going to tell you is you've got your bobbins hanging down. Oh God, that's going to make everyone seasick. You've got your bobbins hanging down from your disc. And if you can see, mine are hanging at different angles here. Some are hanging down further than others. First of all, it's a good rule of thumb to have them all hanging down at the same amount. Second of all, and I should have told you this to start off, sorry, I like to do about, what is that, about 6 to 8 inches, I guess, down. But as you work, you will find your sweet spot between having to, when they're long, they tend to get tangled in between moves, and you have to work to untangle them. But when they're shorter, you have to lengthen them more often. You have to stop more often and lengthen your bobbins. So as you work, see, this is how I should have showed it to you last time. Mine were hanging at different lengths, and each pair wasn't necessarily the same length. As you work, you'll find the right length for you, where you're not having to lengthen it too often, but it's not getting tangled often enough that it's driving you crazy. And that's all definitely a personal preference. So it's almost 8:30. Class ends in about a half an hour. I think I've got a little piece of fluff on my camera. I think I've covered pretty much everything. We talked about finishing. Oh, one thing we didn't talk about. When you're done braiding, what you're going to do is you're going to pretend that I've braided this cord. I'm going to take all my bobbins and I'm going to unhook them from their slots. And I'm going to let them hang down, maybe even lengthen them more. And I'm going to cut up to you how far down from your finished edge. The way you're going to finish off your cord is you're going to tie an overhand knot just like you did to start. You're going to tie the same kind of overhand knot at the end of your cord. Now, when I said it depends on you how much thread you want to leave, traditional in Japan is to leave a fringe hanging down, and you straighten out those threads, make them all pretty, cut them exactly the same length, and it's a work of art just like everything else. There's other things, but also they don't use overhand knots. If any of you know what I'm talking about whip stitching the end of your cord, that's how they traditionally finish it off. I'm not going to go into that here because that's almost a whole class in and of itself. It's not terribly difficult, but I don't want to explode your brains on purpose. But you can finish it however you want. You could braid it in a different, just a 3-piece braid or something like that. You could do, you could put beads on it. You could, if you're using it for a necklace, you could get a jewelry cap that goes over the end of cord and glue that onto the end of it. You can finish it however you want. So when you start and when you end, think about how much cord or how much thread you need sticking out of the end of your cord to make sure that you've got enough there when you finish up your cord and start working on the ends. Anybody have any questions? Anything they want to show us?
May I show you the weights that I made for myself?
Sure. Oh, remind me to talk about weights. Yes. Who are you?
It's Jocelyn. I just turned my video on.
Okay. And can you?
So
Nice.
So these are just alligator clips. And these are pendants that I got from Michael's from
Nice.
the clearance aisle. I have this one. There's this one. These are just 3. And I've got this one.
Lovely.
And as I said, they're the clips, so they're very quick to move.
Very cool.
Each one, they weigh between about 15 to 20 grams, which seems to be a really good weight.
Yeah.
And then after I've been weaving for a while, I'll wind onto a sweater bobbin and I take the weight off because this then serves as my weight.
There you go.
And this is a 4-color 8 strand.
Here's the only thing. Does that weigh pretty much the same as the weights that you made?
Once it gets to be this big, yes.
Okay, because that's what you have to be careful of. When you change to a different weight system, make sure it weighs pretty much the same or your cord is going to look different. My word of warning about alligator clips is if you're going to put it away for any amount of time, take off the alligator clip. It can cut into your cord, your finished cord, and that's no fun. And somebody's showing us something, Pamela. Can we spotlight Pamela and see what she's made? You got quite a bit done there. Oh, look at that. Cool. It looks like you didn't have the colors set up the same way we did. Okay. We can't hear you, Pamela. Pamela, you're muted.
I did, but I screwed it up somehow. I went backwards or something and I just said, I'll keep going and try to straighten it out. Your second setup, I think is right.
Yeah, it looks good there from what I can see on here. Cool.
Yeah. Have you ever used these?
Yeah, I have not used those. One thing I want to say, there are some people who believe that to make square cord, you need a square card. And that is not true. You don't need to use that to make square or flat cord. Having said that, some of those square plates are sold with flat or square patterns that work best with that arrangement of slots. When you're doing a flat or square, when you're doing a flat braid, you usually, can you spotlight me again?
You're spotlighted.
There. When we're working on a flat braid, you usually come to a point where all of the threads are opposite each other. So I'd have 4 here and 4 here. And with some flat and rectangular braids, what you do is you've got 4 here, and you've got 2 here. And these 2 trade places, and they cinch it in to some extent, and they make it more of that rectangular pattern. And you can do that on the round disc, but the flat discs that they sell with that are set up with those slots to help, among other things, make more sense mentally. Wait, I'm not supposed to have that many on this side. I've only got a few slots. So I haven't worked with those. If you want to buy them, if you could make round cords on them if you wanted to, as long as it's got enough slots in the right places. But buy them for the right reason, either because they're cool and you want them, or because it's easier for you to handle, or because it comes with a pattern that is specifically made for that disc. But don't buy it thinking, I want to make a square or a flat cord, so I have to buy this. Does that answer what you were or weren't asking? Do we have anyone else who wants to show us their cords? And have any of you made the transition? Okay, there's Tina. Have any of you made the transition to using the new pattern? Okay, Tina again.
Yeah, I'm using the new pattern, and so far my brain hasn't exploded.
Yay! I can't really see your finished product. It's backlit too much, but it's time for me to tell you that I love to teach, and I love to teach. Ooh, there's a lovely cord, and we can see it. And did you read ahead, or did you do that on accident? Here, let me spotlight you for everyone.
I was trying to change direction of the spiral.
Yep.
Oh, this is in the way. I'll try that one.
Yeah, you can see first the flat, no, move your hand. You can see the straight that you did, and you can see what I said about it will look spiraled if your tension of one hand is different from another. And you could see the true spiral here. And I'm going to take you away for a moment and share screen. Down here at the bottom, it says the spiral pattern can be reversed by repeating step AB. So what you're going to do is, and remember, somebody's got me echoing or got some background noise, I think. Step A is where you move everything over its partner and down next to the next pair. B is where you do the housekeeping for that. C is you move the other direction. D is housekeeping for that. So you would move everything clockwise, do the housekeeping. Move everything clockwise again, do the housekeeping. Then move counterclockwise, do the housekeeping. Then go back to clockwise, housekeeping, counterclockwise, housekeeping, and keep going back in the normal pattern. And what you'll see is, can you hold your cord up again so we can see where you've reversed the spiral? You see right there close to the disc, the spiral suddenly starts going the other direction. You see a little V there. Mm-hmm. All it took was repeating the clockwise move and its housekeeping once and then twice, and then going back to the normal clockwise, counterclockwise, clockwise, counterclockwise. And you too can reverse your spiral. And where am I? What have I done here? I'm gonna put you all back on gallery view. You can take it down now. Thank you so much. I had a teacher who showed us that, and she had this black and orange cord, fairly thick. She held it up in front of class and then started twirling it between her fingers.
Oh, wow.
We all went blind. It was impossible. Did anyone else want to share anything? Maggie, you look like you're holding yours up.
I got mine.
I can try.
Oh, okay. Susan?
Yep,
Okay.
here's mine.
Spotlight for everyone.
Okay.
There you go.
There's my bobbins.
Oh, I like those bobbins. Purdy. Okay, I can't really see the pattern really well.
Yeah. Here's the straight, and the twist starts right about there. You can see a little purple, red, purple, red.
Perfect. I love it. And what are you using as a counterweight? A bag of?
Bag of hooks and rings.
There we go.
Guys, just something. I forgot to bring one.
There we go. I love it. And Maggie, you were holding yours up. Did you want to show it to us?
Sure.
Or were you just staring like a deer in the headlight?
No, I'm just going to see whether or not you can actually see. I really read ahead because I'm working with weaving yarn, and I did pattern 3.
Very nice.
And that's a hand lamper.
You started with the herringbone. You started with the herringbone setup, I think.
Yeah, I started with the 3rd pattern setup. So
Yeah.
the one that's kind of houndstooth or herringbone. So it's got the little diamond bits on it.
Very cool. And your disc has something I've never seen before. Those 4 extra holes.
It's actually from a pattern system. A friend of mine gave me 2 discs and a bunch of pattern plates from an old bracelet kit that has templates for Kongo Gumi patterns.
Perfect. Nice. And yeah, you can find some of those kind of things out there too. Did anyone else want to show us their stuff? Nick?
I don't know if you'll be able to see mine.
Oh, I can see the spiral.
Nice.
Oh, there, and there's the straight. Okay, there's the straight and there's the spiral, looking good. And you've got a paper clip and, no, not a paper clip.
No, they're earring wires.
Nice.
And just pendants.
Nice. Because the counterweight can be whatever makes you happy as long as it, oh, and that's another thing I need to tell you. As long as it's a sufficient weight. And here's the thing. I told you more weight makes it looser. Oh, did anyone else want to show us something before I go in on this? Here's one. Replace spotlight. Oh,
nice.
Yours looks square. Oop, turn it the other way. No, I meant your cord. It's looking square here. Is it actually round?
So you're muted.
I think it is.
Okay. It's just me seeing it weird then.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
came with a kit, but I used a pendant that I made for my weight, so.
I love it. And you did use a paper clip.
Yeah. Well, it's a metal ring at the end too, though.
Yeah.
That's the base.
But your paper clips are usable for every craft project. So when I said that the more weight you use, the looser your cord's going to be, and I talked about it being springy and not springy. Here's the other thing. We had a project where we wanted to do a blue cord with white half moons on, crescent moons on. And there's a pattern called the, I think it's called the Valentine's heart pattern. And it's a standard flat cord pattern. And it gives something that kind of looks like a heart or looks like chevrons, just, triangles, like sergeant stripes. And so we used that pattern. And I used a thicker white than I used blue. And I used, I think, 3 times the weight I normally use. So the extra weight made it pull down more and made it looser. And the thicker thread helped it pop out more and helped it have more of a rounded shape. So I took something that usually looked like just an angle and made it look more like a crescent circle.
Oh, cool.
So when you're playing with a Kumihimo pattern, changing where the colors lay on your bobbin, as you can see from the straight line, the spiral, and the houndstooth or herringbone or whatever, just by changing where the colors lay, you get a different design on the cord. But also changing how much weight you use on the bobbin, more or less, can also change how your pattern looks. And the other thing I wanted to tell you is I love to teach. I especially love to teach Kumihimo. If, this was 2 hours and I couldn't really look at yours. The thing that I love about teaching online is you can see my close-ups really well, and I don't have to walk around the room for that. But I don't get to walk around the room and look at your work. So I can't tell you, yes, that's perfect. This needs to be changed a little bit or whatever. If you want to send me pictures of what you've done, if you want to get together with me for our own one-on-one Zoom session, if you just want to, you know, get some more information about Kumihimo, please contact me. You know how to PM me. My name is all over the Fiberary website. And I do have the correct email address on my handout here, and also on the website itself, which has a different, you can come to my website, come down to the bottom and just click on email. In the living history group that we belong to, I'm known as Lynette. So Debbie, Lynette, they're both me. You can click on that and get an email address to email me at. So feel free to contact me, to show me stuff, to ask me questions, to ask for some time together, whatever. I would be more than happy to help you with anything. Are there any questions, any things that people want to add about Kumihimo they've done, or websites that they know or like? Escape. There we go. Not a whole lot. Well, we can hang, oh, and she has the same kit. Yeah, there's a lot of different kits out there for doing Kumihimo, and they're getting more and more. In one direction, they're getting more and more interesting. In one direction, they're getting more and more the same. You know, that's the way things go in corporate America. And you've got my website of patterns. You can Google Kumihimo. You can YouTube Kumihimo. You'll find other round patterns out there, and flat and square and all kinds of others. If you want, actually, because we have a little extra time, let me show you something. And let me show it to you for two different reasons. One, can you spotlight me? So I'm doing a round pattern here, and I've got my 8 bobbins, and I've let them get all tangled up. Isn't that wonderful? Come on. And part of the reason they're all tangled up is I let some of them get too long. So I'm doing my round pattern. And actually, as circumstance would have it, I have my colors set up to do a square pattern. I can make a square cord. And on that square cord, the pattern that I use uses 8 bobbins. So I'm doing round cord, and now I'm going to start doing a square cord. The square pattern, which is not on my website, is the bottom right comes up and sits next to the top 2. Bottom left does the same thing. You'll notice my threads have gotten kind of loose here. That's because I've got more pull on this side than I do on this side. So when I move these 2 down to the original position, I'm going to make sure I put some extra pull on them and get this back in the center. Then I do housekeeping to move these 2 in. Then I'm going to turn 1/4 turn clockwise. And now bottom right comes up, bottom left comes up. These top 2 come down. I make sure as I'm working that I get all the threads nice and taut. And then I move back to my original starting spot. And see, I didn't get my point of braiding in the center, so I'm going to pull it a little bit. And this is the square braid. This is why I don't usually start the square braid as a starter pattern, because it gets kind of boring after the first couple iterations. It's great for teaching kids if you don't think that they're going to be able to concentrate on the round pattern. It's also great if you want a square cord because, believe it or not, it actually makes a square cord. And with the pattern, the way I've got it set up, you can't see it yet, but you get two sides. You get one side that's blue, the next side is brown, the next side is blue, the next side is brown. You imagine going around the edge of a cube. But the important lesson here was, oops, change the camera. The important lesson here was I was doing a round braid, and then I was doing a square braid, and then I could do my flat braid. As long as it takes 8 bobbins with 4 bobbins of one color and 4 bobbins of the other color, you can transition whenever you want. There'll be a little bit of a blip of some kind when you do the transitioning. But yes, Maggie says that the square pattern is also handier for someone with cognitive issues. Sometimes it's easier to get that than move on to something more complex later on after you've got some familiarity with how this all works. It's a really good, I need a simple starter pattern. But I've always thought, and I've never done it because first of all, I'm never going to sew a purse or beach tote. But wouldn't it be cool to do with thick cord, a cord that starts out flat, goes to round and goes back to flat, so you could sew it on your beach tote. The flat part is what you sew onto the fabric. The round part is what comes up for the handle. And I mentioned that because that shows you the flexibility of other things you can do with the cord. And I didn't talk about what you use the cord for because many of us, as I said, are in the Living History group, and we know you use it to tie bodices, you use it to tie sleeves closed, you use it for drawstrings, for pouches, and for bags. You use it for decorative trim on your garment, especially the flat cord. Makes a real nice soutache cord. You use it for anything that you would use cords for. For a while there, it was wildly popular for shoestrings. Now, of course, it's mostly Velcro, so who needs shoestrings? You can use, with a thicker cord, you can use it for a leash for your pet. You can use it for curtain tiebacks. You can use it for, if you've gotten old enough, I refuse to do this, the cord to hang your glasses off your neck. I mean, I may be 60, almost 64 in 2 months, but I refuse to do that because to me that says, no, I'm old. I know, it's stupid, but there you go. Anything that you would use cord for. And like I said, jewelry. And you could use it either as its own jewelry cord, especially if you made something thicker. For a while, what was really popular was use it with one focal point on it, focal piece, like those pendants that I forget who was showing us she made her weights out of. So you'd make a cord like this in the colors or contrasting colors or whatever of your focal point, and then attach the focal point to it. And those donut pieces, the round stones flat with a hole in the middle, they would put those on the cord just by looping the cord over it and through. So anything you could think of oh, and I may lose fiber arts cred here. I hate I-cord. I can never wrap my mind around I-cord. If I've got the book in front of me and I'm working on it, I finally get to the point where I get it. And then I close the book and I go away for the night or even for 10 minutes. And when I come back, I don't got it no more. And I know that's a failing in me. I admit it. But if you don't like I-cord, if you don't like chain cord for your crochet, when you're making bags or whatever, Kumihimo cord works really, really well for that. So there's a lot you can do with Kumihimo cord, and it's just fun to make, and it's so portable. You put it in a Ziploc plastic bag with the pattern, and you throw it in your purse or your briefcase or whatever. And when you're on the bus or on the passenger seat of the car, or I know some people who do it at stoplights when they're driving, but I don't recommend that. When you're in the doctor's office waiting room, when you're waiting for a play to start, when you're in a meeting, if they don't mind, you know, it's the original fidget spinner. It's something to work on, to keep your hands busy while your brain's doing something else, or to keep your hands and brains busy when there's nothing else to do.
I have a question for you.
Yay!
Yay. So you're working on a really, really long cord that you need for something.
Yes.
You mismeasure one of your bobbins and you run out of thread on one bobbin, and you still have 3 feet of cord you need to do, and you need it continuous. How do you attach an extra thread or splice in a thread?
Well, the easiest answer is you cry. And I did want to mention that earlier, so thank you. The problem is, as you can see, there's no place to hide a knot. Now, the round cord is hollow. If you look down the center, well, you can't see it here, it is hollow. And if you're using big enough cord, you've got a nice size tube in the middle there. So if you're using big enough cord, you could work really, really hard and hide a knot in the tube and keep going. If you have cord that you can use the Russian join on, or in some other way splice the cord together, or if you, I suppose if you took and made a long diagonal cut on one thread and a long diagonal cut on the other thread, and use some strong flexible glue and try to glue them together and mash them back to their original shape, that might work. This is the first time I've ever thought of saying that. So I don't know. That might work.
Okay,
But
I was just wondering if you had any ideas, because when it did happen to me, I did the hide a knot in the center and then just carefully weave around it, and it did hide it very nicely. I was using rug warp, 4/8 rug warp, so it
perfect.
did hide nicely.
So you had a nice tube in the middle. Yeah, if you've got,
Yeah, there was just a little tiny pregnant spot, but it really, in the long term, it wasn't really noticeable.
Exactly, it wouldn't be.
I just wanted to know. I've learned a lot of new methods today, and I was just curious to see if you had some suggestions on the whole adding thread.
Those are my suggestions. If it's something this size, crying. If you've got something big enough to do to hide the hole or not, that's perfect. If you know how to do a Russian join or something like that, and your cord will let you do it, that's perfect. That glue idea I just came up with, it might work. The worst that can happen is it won't work and you have to end your cord there anyway, so give it a try. The important part is check, double check, triple check that you've made all the threads on your bobbin long enough. And thank you. You reminded me of something I should tell you that I forgot because we all hate it. Let's see. I don't know where. Oh, there it is. Make sure that you've made all the threads longer than you need to make them. Do I not have this on this page? Well, I will have to slap myself on the hand and I will add it to this page. bad, Debbie. I wish I could blame it on my web right, but I'm my web right, so it's all me. When you're doing a project like that, the very, very, very best thing that you can do is to take and measure out a specific amount of cord, like a yard or a half a yard or whatever. Put it on each of your bobbins, set up your pattern, do the pattern, and make sure you've measured 1 yard from where the knot is to the end of the cord. Do the pattern until you can't go any further. And then measure how much you got out of that. 1 yard, I had 2 inches left and I got 8 inches. I don't know. That'll show you how much take up there is. But also check all 8 of your bobbins, because depending on the pattern, like that one pattern I mentioned for the square Kumihimo disc, the side 2 that go across, they don't use thread at the same amount as the other threads. So depending on your pattern, some of the bobbins may have more or less thread left on them. It might not have been that you mismeasured your thread. It may have been that those 2 bobbins were worker bobbins that did more work than the rest of them. So if you've done swatching, that's what we're talking about. You get a piece of paper, and I will post my swatch pattern, my swatch sheet, and I will put a link in the class event when I get it up. You put down the name of the pattern and or project. You attach a copy of the pattern or photocopy it, or what book in what page in what book, but attaching one is best. You say what thread you're using, the size, the brand, the whatever. You draw a little circle diagram like what I have on on here, to tell you where you used the colors. You use a little circle diagram like this that tells you where you put each of the colors. You then say how much you used. I started out with a yard. I ended up with this much cord, this much left on bobbins A, B, and C, and this much on whatever. You attach that sample that you made to the sheet. You put any other notes on there that make sense to you, because you do this swatch, you'll know exactly how much you need to put on each of your bobbins to do the project, and then put on extra just because. And when you make this cord and somebody loves it and wants you to make another one, you know how to do it. So swatching in Kumihimo is important. People often ask me, how much cord do I need to get this? Well, it depends. Which pattern are you using? The round pattern that I have here versus the one we were looking at earlier uses cord differently. What size are your threads? Thinner thread, thicker thread, use them differently. Do you have a mix of thick and thin threads? That's going to use them differently. The thin thread is probably going to use more than the thick thread because it's got to squiggle more to get around the big threads. It all depends on what you're doing. So swatch it. I don't necessarily write all the information down like I should, but before I start a project where I care about how it's going to turn out, I'll do a sample. I recently did on my website, I usually sell in person, and I found out something really interesting about selling online. Let's see. Wait. You're going about this all wrong, silly person. If I come down here, selling online, you can sell things that you wouldn't sell at an event, because I can sell you a kit with a pattern made, with the cords all set up for my bloody fang cord that I developed, or my jack-o'-lantern grin, or my angel cord. You can see little angels there, etc. I wouldn't do that selling an event, because that would mean I'd have stock tied up in this one and that one and that one and that one and that one. But when I'm selling online, I can make the kit to order. There you go. So all of these that you see here, I developed the middle to the end of last year. And what I did was I just took a yard of thread and I put it on bobbins. And then I set up the colors the way I wanted to, and I started playing with it. And I moved the colors around and I played with it. And I did this, that, and the other thing, and I played with it. Basically the equivalent of knitting, designing on the needles. So I do, in this picture, these look even more like candles, because that kind of looks like a flame. I never got far enough back to see it. Cool. So my point is, before you start a big project, don't start the big project. Do a little project, a mini project. Get as much information as you can out of that mini project, so that when you get to the big project, you don't have any issues like running out of cord, or it's not turning out the way I wanted it to, and I've got to change the colors, and now do what you can. If you run out of cord, if you've got big something like that and you can hide the knot, it'll take some finagling, but you can do it. You can try the glue or a Russian join or something like that. If you don't know what a Russian join is, you can look it up online as Russian join. If you know anything about knots, it's a method of splicing cord together, which is a way of saying, well, the cord, the threads here are twisted together and the threads here are twisted together. So if I untwist them and twist them back together again, it should kind of be like one cord again. And one problem with splicing is that it's a weak spot, but in Kumihimo, that doesn't matter, because there's no weight on that particular cord once you get done. You may have to baby it through the join for a little bit, but then once you get past it, once the cord is made, it's going to be fine. It'll be just as strong as you need it to be. So that was Jocelyn's answer, plus some other stuff you didn't ask about. I will post when I put my what's the word? I just lost it.
Your handout? What? Your handout?
Yeah, the handout for the swatching, my swatching handout. I don't know if it's being 63 or being retired or COVID rotting my brain, but I've been losing words lately.